The final countdown is here. The coolest of Scotland's coolest fill the following pages, along with a reminder of those who featured over the past 2 weeks. The people on this list tell a story about who and what Scotland is today. Their coolness comes in many different forms. It may reside in the way they look, what they make, the way they carry themselves, or the impact they have on the world. Some you may agree with, some not. But we're sure you're aching to know who is our number one. 20. Mark Hogarth, 42, textile designer. Why? He is the Harris tweed guru. When, earlier this year, Scotland was rebranded for the world, in the £6 million Scotland is Now campaign, it included a short film with Mark Hogarth, creative director of Harris Tweed, Hebrides. There is good reason for this, for the former male model, who grew up on a dairy farm in Ardrossan, is widely credited with having made Harris Tweed cool again. 10 years ago, the company of which he is creative director took over a derelict mill at Shabas, Harris. Now Harris Tweed Hebrides has an annual turnover of £10 million and employs 250 mill workers and weavers. These days Harris Tweed has a host of celebrity fans, from Gwyneth Paltrow through to Madonna. Hogarth is at the heart of an incredible revival story. In his Scotland is Now film, Hogarth observes, "For me, the key word is pioneering, because the word fashion is almost synonymous with the word new. You've got to captivate what is new, but not at the expense of your own tradition." 19. Mary Moriarty, 79, former pub landlady. Why? She's a legend at nearly 80 years old. Her birthday, which she shares with her twin, is just around the corner. Mary Moriarty, former landlady of the Port O'Leith, is still one of the coolest, most glamorous people you're likely to come across in increasingly hipsterized Leith. She even has an entry on the Advanced Style website, a blog appreciation of the fashion sense of older women by New Yorker Ari Seth Cohen. But more crucially, she is also one of those local legends who is always out there doing her bit for the community, whether it's putting her energies into the Leith Festival, or hands-on picking up litter in the park whenever there's a big event. The Port O'Leith, when she ran it, was one of Scotland's most iconic boozers, a place where the clientele used to dance on the bar and it felt as if almost anything might happen. Formerly frequented by sailors, who gave it its nautical decor, it had working-class edginess. A year or so ago it refurbished and gone the way of most hipster pubs, but Moriarty still pops in very occasionally, for some of the old regulars are still there. 18. Mito Solomon, 42, drinks industry entrepreneur. Why? He's bringing back the old-fashioned pub, with newfangled drinks. Pubs can change an area. They can make a community. Mito Solomon had been living and working in Kinning Park for a while when he heard that the old toll bar was closing down. "I went down to see it," he says, "and it was like walking into a time machine. Beautiful. It was an old pub that had just been misused. There were lots of screens and plasma screens." Solomon had long had a love of old pubs. He had grown up in West London, Ladbroke Grove, and as a child he'd always loved the magic of Victorian bars. It always looked like there was a lot of fun and laughter and joyous times coming from inside, so that was what he tried to recreate. He stripped back the decor and turned it, as he puts it, into a pub that's part of the community. No screens, no fruit machines, just craft beers, great drinks and knowledgeable bartenders. What brought him to Glasgow in the first place? A girl I was dating many years ago. She was from Scotland and moving back up. I thought it was a good opportunity. That relationship didn't last too long, but Glasgow was such a dynamic, cosmopolitan place I thought I'd stay. I love the city, I love the people. And now it's home. 17. Karen Gillan, 30, actor. Why? Because she's putting the sass into superhero movies. You could argue that Gerard Butler is Scotland's biggest Hollywood star these days. And I guess if you like meathead melodrama, with none of the self-awareness of Jason Statham, that's fine. But really, the clever money is on Karen Gillan these days. She's already got 2 Guardian of the Galaxy movies and 1 Avengers movie on her IMDb listing, with another of each on the way, and she's working on a sequel to Jumanji in which she will hopefully once again have the chance to show off her comic chops. Fact is, ever since she turned up as Amy Pond in Doctor Who, dressed in a short skirt and a fancy dress version of a police uniform, Gillian has been a red-haired tonic, smart, funny, ambitious and not embarrassed to be. She's conquered British TV, carved out a career for herself in the United States and even turned her hand to directing. The party's just beginning. Now all she needs a modern-day Nora Ephron to realize that she is clearly a Meg Ryan or Julia Roberts in waiting. 16. Phil McHugh, 31, PR guru. Why? If there's a cool party he's probably there, or running it. McHugh is the PR behind some of the most current brands, hotels and restaurants. If there's a swanky party or opening event happening, he'll probably be there, possibly dressed in a dapper pink suit and with a hairdo that looks as if it was created under zero-gravity conditions. He's there on the front row at many a Paris or London Fashion Week show. Among the many big bashes this man about town, as his column in the Scottish Sun is titled, has been to, was Pharrell Williams' 40th birthday, where, McHugh recalls, he had Alicia Keys pop out a cake and sing him happy birthday. But McHugh isn't just about the style and the partying, he's a television presenter and Gaelic speaker, who values his cultural heritage and believes that is cool. In the run-up to the independence referendum, he was a PR and events manager for the Yes campaign. Glasgow-raised and from a Barra family, he's even a nifty Highland dancer, and counts Simple Minds Mick McNeil as a relative. What next for the PR? His agency, SKAPA, is, he says, about to bring a new hotel brand to Scotland, Moxie Hotels. Big parties are promised, naturally. 15. Kimberly Benson, 27, wrestler. Why? She rocks the wrestling ring. You only have to watch footage of Kimberly Benson slamming an opponent to the floor to know she is on this cool list. Known by her stage name, Viper, the vixen of violence, she's a star of World of Sport Wrestling and pioneer female in her sport. Benson is big in Japan, where she has a huge following, and was the first Scottish wrestler to main event the famous Korakuen Hall. She has even been the subject of a BBC documentary, Fight Like a Girl, and is one of the key stars lined up for World of Sport's much-anticipated live tour of the UK starting in January next year. She's a charismatic pantomime figure who swaggers across the ring in her trademark costume of leotard and fishnet tights. Part of the appeal of wrestling is, she says, the rebellion of it all. I've always been one of those punk rock kids that just wanted to cheat the system in some ways. I love watching larger-than-life characters rebel against conformity. That's why she chose the name Viper, in tribute to Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Texas Rattlesnake, one of the biggest wrestling rebels of them all. Benson's life mainly revolves around her sport, though she does still work in her father's coach business in Ayrshire. As well as wrestling opponents, she has also fought off, and floored, stigma around her body shape. People, she has said, wrote me off because of my size and what I look like and thought I was some stupid, blonde girl who was never going to amount to anything. 14. John Byrne, 78, artist and playwright. Why? You don't get more dapper. Earlier this year, when John Byrne was named Scotland's most stylish man, the artist and playwright's response, it seems, was astonishment. I'm surprised I've lived to the age of 78, never mind being a trendsetter, he said. Half the time I dress like a tramp. There's a lot of days where I go out to the post office and I just throw anything on. I'm often a sight so folks steer clear of me, holding their nose. Somehow this comment just made the artist seem even cooler. 4. In his tweed suits, cravats and brogues, he has a dapper elegance. In fact, no matter what Byrne says or does, he'll always be an icon of sorts. Part of it is his art, part of it his personal style, and some of it is the way he has lived his life. Byrne isn't afraid to do or talk about things that are shocking to some. His marriage to Tilda Swinton, with whom he had 2 children, was unconventional. Recently, he revealed, he understood that he was the child of an incestuous relationship between his mother and his grandfather. 13. Hayley Scanlon, 35, fashion designer. If there's one designer in Scotland who is really making a mark on pop music and popular culture, it's Dundee's Hayley Scanlon. Her designs are so of the moment, that they are frequently copied by fast fashion stores, and what makes her all the more cool is that Scanlon is not having it. Frequently she calls them out. "I just think they're so brazen about it," she says. "It happens so much now and it's like the norm. You've got to accept it, which is not right. Why not call it out?" Twice winner of Young Designer of the Year, Scanlon is the go-to vision for many a band, from Little Mix through to Jessie J. Her big influences also come from the music she grew up with: Debbie Harry, Madonna and Michael Jackson. "My aunties and my mum and dad all played the Thriller album," she recalls. "I remember I used to have a Michael Jackson doll and I always used to point to the TV and say he's my boyfriend." Impressively, she managed to start up her own business round the time of the birth of her twin sons. "They were 6 months old and it was a bit wild and I don't actually know how I've managed to do it. Became a single mom, so I kind of had no choice but to work." Right now, she says, she's working on a top-secret project, creating designs for a band whose name she will not divulge. She is also working on a project involving bagpipes. The coolest thing she's ever done? Making clothes for the Little Mix video last year. "Even my sons think it's cool because they're at school and all the little girls are like Little Mix obsessed." 12. Andy Murray, 31, social media star. Why? He's a master of the Instagram volley. Who cares if it's not a big winning, or even playing, year for our Andy? He's done enough of that to give him cool points to last a lifetime. Right now what makes him cool is not the tennis but the social media entertainment he's bringing us. It's tweets like the one he did last autumn, parodying Donald Trump's tweet about Time magazine Person of the Year. It's his banter with rival Nick Kyrgios. It's pictures like the one he posted of his nose bloodied by a run-in with his daughter. It's the surreal Instagram cue. Game, set an Instagram match to Murray. 11. Nikita Scott, 31, surfer and environmentalist. Why? She's an eco-warrior of the waves. The best campaigners for the ocean are those who know it well: surfers, jockters, divers. One of them is Nikita Scott, born and raised in Tillicoultry, now resident in New York, where she heads up the city's chapter of the eco-warrior organization, Surfrider. Not only is she leading a fight against the Donald Trump administration's plans to expand offshore drilling, but she already has one campaign success under her belt. She and her chapter fought a successful 2-year campaign to stop the building of a liquefied gas port off Long Island. Scott has been surfing since she was in her 3rd year at the University of Glasgow, and she decided to try a new club, found herself on a trip to Tiree, and was hooked. For her, part of the attraction was being in touch with the ocean. "There's a connection to nature that I don't really get in any other situation." What really ignited her environmental conscience, though, was some of the things she saw when she spent a year, post-university, traveling the world, working and seeking out the perfect wave. One of those things was the destruction already well underway of the Great Barrier Reef, and the other was the waves of plastic she saw when she was in Bali. The best wave she's ever ridden? When in Portugal, it was incredible. 10. Connor Newall, 19, model. The features of Gov and model Connor Newall, angular, low-browed and chiseled, have graced many a high-profile fashion campaign and magazine cover. They were there on the Big Tom Ford 2018 summer campaign, and they're too in a Pharrell Williams Raw brand shoot. But Newall is more than just a striking face. He is a story too. 4 years ago, he was spotted, while rushing to class in Trinity High School, by a casting director Renfrew, who invited him to an audition for a short awareness film about knife crime. Newall played the lead role, but the film also had a personal relevance. His own cousin had been victim of a fatal knife crime, and, when newspapers and magazines featured his tale, and he became a figurehead for the awareness campaign. 3 years later and he is one of the world's iconic male models. His fashion impact is global. When we talk, he's preparing to go to Barcelona and shoot for GQ China. Weeks ago he had been in a Vogue film. What he wants now is to go back to the medium in which he made his first break, and forge a career in acting. Earlier this year, he appeared in a short film, titled Bunny, which is, he says, about mental health awareness. He hopes this will be the start of a new career. But, he points out, global success hasn't changed him too much. When he's home he likes to hang out with his mum and his girlfriend. And, he says, his personal look hasn't changed. I still don't see what people see in me, he says. I still dress a wee bit like a Ned. It's all good. 9. Marie Macklin, entrepreneur. Why? She's making the regeneration happen. 9 years ago, in Kilmarnock, 20,000 people marched to save the Johnny Walker plant. Marie Macklin was at the head of that crowd. This was her community, where she had grown up and gone to school, where her father had run a construction business. It was also a place that even during her childhood, she had seen economically decline. But Macklin didn't just stop at marching. Her experience in the financial industry in London meant she had the knowledge to take that energy and make something of it, and she did. That day, she recalls, was the catalyst for me to create the Halo brand, which will provide young people in the local community with sustainable long-term economic and social benefits. Macklin, whose coolness extends to the bling of her flamboyant personal style, has countless awards to her name, including Female Business Leader of the Year 2017. Her aim is to bring economic life back, not only to Kilmarnock, but to other sites across the UK. It begins at the site of the former Johnny Walker bottling plant, where their first project will be an urban park. The Halo, she says, is about being disruptive and rocking the economy to create practical advantages for local communities. We like to think and act as pioneers. It also involves forging ties with partners like Scottish Power, which she says is committed to playing a key role in creating the Halo cyber and digital training and learning facility, which will be at the forefront of the fourth industrial revolution. 8. Ian Sterling, 30, comedian. Why? He is the voice of the Love Island generation. When, this year, the whole of the UK, including George Osborne, seemed to drop everything to watch Love Island, one of the chief draws of it was the man who brought the pantomime wit, irony and geekish megalomania to its voiceover. That man was Scottish comedian Ian Sterling. Back in 2017, NME had declared him the real champion of the show. This year, it seemed he was shaping up as a cultural figure in his own right, bringing a show to the Edinburgh Fringe, publishing a book not ready to adult yet, and getting spotted at Wimbledon cozying up to his girlfriend, fellow presenter, Laura Whitmore. But Edinburgh-born and raised Sterling was initially skeptical about doing the show that has made his name. It is only after he was invited to do the very middle-class Latitude Music Festival because of his part in the show that he began to realize it might be a cult hit. His theories about its success? It's about relationships. Talk about relationships essentially throughout the entire program, and there's very little deviation from that, and relationships are the one thing that everyone wants to gossip about most of the time. It's like Love Island went, do you want to know about that stuff? Well, here's a show that's an hour of it every day. 7. Jamie Genevieve, 25, makeup vlogger. Why? She's Scotland's biggest social media star, and she's for real when fans turned out to meet makeup vlogger Jamie Genevieve on her recent tour promoting her first lipstick. Frequently they would weep. The social media star has over 700,000 YouTube followers, and many of them feel almost as if she were their friend or big sister. Her fans, particularly those in Scotland, feel they know her, and even are supported by her. What marks Genevieve out from other makeup tutorial influencers is how real and relatable she seems. As she said to us herself, part of her appeal is that she is quite daft. I don't edit myself loads. If things go wrong I keep it in. If I look rubbish in one frame, I keep it in. It doesn't bother me. I think everyone's a bit weird and I'm not scared of being a bit of a weirdo. The Glasgow-based vlogger is also refreshingly honest about her looks. I think the most honest picture of me ever, she says, is a picture of me jet-lagged, on my couch with a plate of dinner on my chest. Someone turned it into a meme and it went totally viral, and I was like, brilliant. But Genevieve's life, of course, is quite different from her fans. Through her weekly vlogs, they get to see her jetting across the world, on safari in Kenya, partying in Ibiza and staying at swanky hotels, as well as getting her lip fillers done in her local beauty clinic. She, her fiancé, Jack McCann, and their dog, Drugba, are probably the closest we, in Scotland, have to our very own Kardashians. 6. Josh Littlejohn, 31, social entrepreneur. Why? He got thousands of us to sleep in the park. Josh Littlejohn has changed our perceptions of how to tackle homelessness. His charity, Social Bite, he has gone from selling sandwiches to building a village for the homeless, and, this year, a huge project to get 800 rough sleepers off the streets of our cities. He's the man who somehow managed to lure George Clooney and Leonardo DiCaprio to his little sandwich shop on Edinburgh's Rose Street, and who, last year, persuaded 8,000 of us to sleep out in Edinburgh's Princes Street Gardens to raise money for his Social Bite village of houses for the homeless. This year, 12,000 people will sleep out in parks in 4 different cities to fundraise for a project which he hopes will transform our approach to homelessness and get those 800 people off the streets. Littlejohn is a trailblazer. He has a principle of not paying himself more than 7 times the wage of his lowest paid member of staff. In the early days of Social Bite, he and his partner Alice Thompson even had some of their homeless staff live in their one-bedroom flat because they had nowhere else to stay. What keeps him going? Not wanting to let down my teenage, idealistic self, he says. Littlejohn's own childhood in Blair Drummond was relatively affluent. His father was a successful restaurateur, but he went to the local state school, marched for Make Poverty History, listened to Rage Against the Machine, and wanted to change the world. 5. Lauren Mayberry, 30, singer. Why? She's our Joan of Arc, fronting electropop maestros churches, undeniably one of Scotland's coolest bands, should be reason enough for the Stirlingshire-born singer's place on the cool list. But her contribution goes well beyond fashion and music. She has also shown herself to be an astute and unabashed contributor to discussions about sexual politics and gender issues. Intelligent, witty and vocal, she has been trolled half to death over the years as a result, but as much as she's a lightning rod for online haters, so has she become a standard-bearer of sorts for young feminists and gay rights activists. Earlier this year, she talked about the rape threats she has had along the way, and observed that, if she had known this was what the career would be like, she might have, as a teenager, thought, why the F would you want to do that? She has campaigned with Amy Poehler for girls' empowerment. She wrote her master's thesis on images of women in fashion magazines. Next year, she and Shirley Manson will deliver the keynote speech at the South by Southwest Festival in Austin, Texas, and it's sure to be punchy. As she told the Sunday Herald earlier this year, she isn't afraid to call out bullshit when she sees, hears or reads it. Not for nothing did the Eurythmics' Dave Stewart dub her a punk rock Joan of Arc. 4. Darren McGarvey, 34, rapper and author. Why? He wrote the Book of the Year even before Darren McGarvey won the Orwell Prize for Political Writing earlier this year. People were saying he was the standout, authentic voice of a generation. His memoir Poverty Safari, originally published by Luith Press, for which he won the prize, had been much anticipated. For McGarvey, a rapper, who performs under the stage name Loki, had already gathered a social media following as a smart commentator who knew firsthand what deprivation was. Poverty Safari, with its subtitle, Understanding the Anger of Britain's Underclass, was a savage exploration of poverty. Partly it told the story of McGarvey's own difficult childhood. At one point he even describes how his mother, an alcoholic and drug addict who died from cirrhosis at 36, chased after him, aged just 5 years old, with a serrated bread knife. But it was also a razor-sharp polemic, one that declared war on the conditions that allow the cycles of abuse and addiction to continue. The world is looking for eloquent voices like McGarvey's to explain things. That's why he was invited on to Question Time, where he shone. It's why his Poverty Safari Live at the Edinburgh Fringe was a hit. It's also why earlier this year he clinched a two-book deal with Ebury, the non-fiction wing of Penguin. It's why he is the person invited to read the bedtime story of the Glasgow Sleep in the Park. He stands out in an angry world. For what marks McGarvey out as not just his own perspective, but that he is open to others. He is, as he has said, in an often all too tribal world, trying to find out what's true, even if I don't like it. 3 Rachel McLean, 31, artist. Why? She makes our social media hell into fabulous art. There's no artist quite like Rachel McLean. She has created a mad filmic vision of her own, through a process all of her own. Most of the strange and grotesque characters in her films are her, in disguise, transformed with thick layers of garish makeup and digital effects. She is the one lip-syncing to found audio tracks. She is the figure transported via green screen into a bizarre universe, and it's all magnificently out there. McLean is as brilliantly surreal as Bjork, but she is also a reminder of what art can do, that journalism or a TV documentary can't. She nails the nightmare that is our social media and fake news age. Spite Your Face, the film she presented last year at the Venice Biennale, turned the Pinocchio tale into a satire on the Trump era, and, over a year on, seems more relevant than ever. She demonstrates, too, the extremes an artist may go to for their art. McLean spent a month eating and sleeping in Birmingham's Bullring shopping centre, dressed as a giant, grotesque bunny. For her films, she says, I live inside the world of the film quite extensively for the few years it takes to make it. The time you're in costume is maybe a day, but then there's just all the living and thinking about the characters. But with McLean, what makes her all the more cool is that she is now taking her vision to a wider audience. This autumn we'll see her much-hyped first feature film broadcast on the BBC. Filmed in the derelict spaces of St. Peter's Seminary, it's a feminist response to Kenneth Clark's landmark cultural series Civilization. To Jerry Cinnamon, 32, singer. Why? He's a belter. When, earlier this month, Jerry Cinnamon added a few extra dates to his tour, they sold out in 3 minutes. Last week footage of Irish dancers performing to his hit, She's a Belter, went viral. There are plenty of big names out there in Scottish music, but right now it's Jerry Cinnamon's moment. Right now it's his very Scottish version of cool, just a man on a stage with his guitar, singing out some great tunes, that has got Scotland absolutely buzzing. What he did at TRNSMT earlier this year said everything about him. Taking the main stage after Jay Huss pulled out, he turned the audience into a great, huge belting choir, who even chanted out his name. See when the crowd's with you, he said, singing every word. It's a mad feeling. Beautiful mayhem. Jeff Ellis, director of TRNSMT, recognized how big he was. Not since Oasis have I seen someone go on such a rapid trajectory around here, he said. He's gone from playing to 50 people.